3rd of January 2024. This is another loose cannon delivery, and I'm going to talk about the issues that we have with representation in Parliament, city councils, things like that, provincial councils. That is a clusterfuck, to say the least. At the root of this whole problem lies that crazy story about proportional representation. On paper it sounds fantastic, but what happens in practice? The theory is that the whole country votes, and you vote for your selected party and whatever, and in the end the votes are counted and they come to a conclusion. Okay, the end result is Party A have received 60% of the votes, Party B has received 20%, Party C has received 20%. So what they do is they take, there's 400 seats available in Parliament, so Party A will get 60% of it, Party B will get 20%, and Party C will get 20%. Sounds great, sounds very fair, but what is happening behind the fucking scenes? Behind the scenes, before the election starts, all these parties must submit a list to the IEC, and that list must contain the names from number 1 to number wherever they guess they would come. Fairly optimistic, always optimistic, and they must put the names down there. Now what these political parties tell you is that the regions and the fucking local branches, they nominate the people that they want to see on that list. And those nominations go up through the steps and through the stairs and through all the fucking passages up to the right, and then in the end it is 4 or 6 people that sit there at the table and they decide which names will be on the list. So what happens? They put obviously they put their names in there and right at the top. And then they start putting in their chummies and their family and guys that they owe money and cock like that. Nothing to do with democracy. Nothing. And then that list goes to the IEC and the votes are counted, and the IEC says, okay, 60% for this party, and they go down and say, okay, that's up there. Those are the representatives. Now, in practice, this is what happens, and in reality, we get stuck in a fucking situation where a useless cretin, because of his privileged position that he managed to maneuver for himself in that party structures, sits in Parliament for 30 and 40 years. And the voters, sitting out there in the rural areas, sitting out in the small town regions and branches, has got no fucking way of getting that useless piece of flesh that is called a human just because the fucker can walk upright and breathe. Get him out of that chair. They cannot get them out. Those people sitting down there in Cape Town represents nobody. Fuck all, nobody. They represent nobody. All they do is they sit there and make sure that they keep the people that put them on the list happy. So they follow instructions to the T to retain their positions. And over years, in these political parties, and I'm talking about South Africa now, maybe applicable to many other countries in the world, these political parties, they create an elite dynasty that sits at the top of this party. And this dynasty operates like old age kings, where power is inherited down his bloodline to his sons and things like that, and it's a family cluster sitting there. And this is what is going on in South Africa. That's why you get a useless person like Fikile that has built and established and achieved fuck all in life, but he sits in that position and he has been rotated around ministerial posts and fuck knows what for 30 years. That is how it works in South Africa. That is why people is not getting service, because these dynasties that are sitting in the ANC, in the EFF, in the DA, and in the Freedom Front Plus, and in every one of the parties, they are perpetual rulers. Look at the Freedom Front Plus. The top positions is in the hands of the same fucking crowd for 30 years. 30 years. Gauteng section of the Freedom Front rebelled, and it was successful, and they replaced the dynasty there. And what happened in practice? When those entitled chairwarmers realize that they've lost the election, they walk out and breaks the quorum, which makes that meeting unconstitutional. And then the federal board, or what the fuck they want to call them, issues a letter and a note to Gauteng and says your election were a bullshit, it's illegal, you'll have to revote. Think about it. What the fuck is happening there? It is a dynasty controlling everything. They will make a big fucking noise about communism, while they actually practices communism in that fucking party. There is an elite politburo that is not accountable to anybody, that controls all the major issues in that party. And I named the Freedom Front Plus because I'm a Boer and I've got an interest in that party. But that's how it works in every fucking political party in South Africa. Now, there seems to be a move in the white population, Afrikaner population. There are a grouping that wants to get rid of that dynasty. And now there's all sorts of shit and the reasons why they can't. And one of the reasons mentioned in one of the little meetings we had is that these protesters must be prepared to be jailed. And we must make provision for legal fees and lawyers and all kak on standby, because the police will arrest protesters and they will spend time in jail. What kak is that? What? Is that democracy? Definitely not. And why did that guy say that to us? Because that is what's happening to the EFF, that's what's happening to the ANC, that's happening to all of these black parties. If they protest, a number of their protesters land in jail. Okay, some of them have to go to jail because they fucking looters and they're there under the cover of a protest just to commit criminal acts. I can understand that, I've got no problem with that. But we have seen peaceful protesters during the snakebite kak getting jailed. And you want to convince yourself this South Africa is a shithole, but you call it a democracy. It's not a fucking democracy. It's controlled by communist-based mechanisms. And we have people in the white communities, specifically in the Afrikaner conservative side, the Boer tribe, that are now getting very, very, very unsettled about this state of affairs because they can see it's a fuck up. But in the black communities, there's a grouping that has been labeled by the ANC as the clever blacks. They must take responsibility for the shit in their communities, because they are the qualified people. They are the ones with the brains that can tell the people what the fuck is going on, but they don't tell them. They keep their mouth shut. Why? Yes, because the ANC, through its mechanisms and machinery, destroys these clever blacks' careers if these guys speak out. Now, my question is, the population should protect them. But in the case of the clever blacks, the population cannot protect them because the population don't know about them. They know about a few individuals. But those individuals, labeled as clever blacks, they can form a fucking powerful lobby. They just need the balls to do it. If they one or two or three, they can be roughly handled by the vested interests. But if they 500 or 1,000 or 2,000, and among them, there's powerful guys there, they will be able to defend themselves, and they will be able to actually bring freedom to their people. Not this cock that the ANC is trying to sell you, or that the EFF is trying to sell you. Not that cock that the Freedom Front Plus is trying to sell us. No, real freedom. So, on this day, I need you to take a damn good look at what the hell is going on, and think about it, and ask yourself, how is it possible that in a democracy you cannot get rid of a fucker that sits in parliament and doesn't do his job? Ask yourself, how is that possible? Ask yourself whether that is democracy. If you look at the ANC benches there in parliament, 80% of the people sitting there are actually pensioners. Surveys has pointed out to the fact and established the fact that 60% of them sitting there cannot read a financial document. Financial statements, they can't read it. But yet they vote on budgets. Same thing happens in the municipal council, same thing happens in the provincial councils. You must think about these things. The country is in the fucking sewer because idiots is in charge. How can you expect the country to prosper if you have stupid people making the decisions that should drive the country to prosperity? It can never happen. It's like taking a taxi driver and throw him behind the controls of a Boeing 747. There's only an idiot that will think that that airplane will take off and, more importantly, land again. This is the problem in South Africa. We, the people, have been effectively castrated so that we cannot remove those useless cretins sitting in parliament. That must change. Think about it. Please give me a like and a subscribe and share the thing. Thank you for your support.